Great, here we go. Good evening, everybody, and I'd like to call to order the August 17th, 2022 board meeting. And please remind everyone to mute your audio when not speaking, as well as state your name prior to making a comment or motion, and second for an action item. I'll begin by calling each commissioner, and I'd like you to please respond to here when I call your name. Commissioner Doan,
Here.
Commissioner Duggan,
Here.
Commissioner Fisher.
Here.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. We will begin this evening with reports by our Chief Executive Officer and management staff, which I believe we have Paul as our representative this evening.
That's correct, President Sanders. Good
Thank
evening.
you, Paul.
Good evening, President Sanders and Commissioners. Tonight, I will be presenting the CEO update. Our CEO, as you know, is out of the office with his family, and I'm covering for him this evening. Peter Boone, who's also on the call with us today, he's the district's Chief Operating Officer, is acting in the capacity for the CEO until he returns. Tom will be back in the office on the 29th. Legislative update. We welcomed legislators to the water supply system treatment plant site. We had 3 meetings, one on July 18th, August 8th, and the 11th. These tours provide an opportunity to highlight the regional importance of the Willamette water supply system and to continue our request for state assistance. During the meeting, legislators learned about the history and scope of the WWSS, the state-of-the-art water treatment plant, seismic resiliency, and recent inflationary challenges that we've experienced. Tours like these are essential to securing state and federal assistance, which would lessen the burden on our customers. We have another legislative tour scheduled for September 20th. And with that, I will turn over to Ted Boylan, our IT Service Director. He'll present tonight's Safety Minute and the department report. Tim, please take it away.
Great, thank you, Paul. Good evening, President Sanders and Commissioners. I am pinch hitting today for Andrew Carlstrom, who's unable to be here. So he was gracious enough to help put together both the safety moment and the department report. So safety moment today is really focused on safety as we head back to school. As my kids are loath to admit, there's only 20 days left till school starts. And this is a time where there's going to be a significant increase in pedestrian traffic. And with today's dynamic, many of these young folks are going to be using phones. 20 years ago, younger children who were less aware of their surroundings were really the ones that were more at risk of being struck. But there's been a big shift, and today it's more likely that a teenager will be looking at a phone and not paying attention to what's around them. So some stats about cell phones. Really the gist of the safety message is today that young people, children especially, don't recognize the dangers of being distracted while walking. Many times you'll see them focused on their phone, texting, and not really paying attention. So the recommendation is to reinforce with those in your family and that you know that if they do need to text, move out of the way of others and really pay a little bit of attention when they get to things like street crossings or anytime they're around pedestrian traffic. And then it's also important to reinforce the need for situational awareness and avoid having headphones in when high traffic or dangerous areas. So, some of the key messages are stay on the sidewalk if one's available. If you have to walk on the street, make sure that you're facing oncoming traffic. Look left, right, and forward before crossing streets, and really be careful where you cross. These are lessons many of us learned as kids ourselves, and kids today tend to get easily distracted. So we just want to remind them, as well as the adults, to keep an eye out for kids and hope for everybody's safety as we head back into the classroom this fall. And then pivoting into the the department report, we're going to provide a brief update on our new customer information system. So as Andrew is excellent at doing, we're just going to reiterate the project's purpose, which was to replace our aging customized utility billing system with a commercial viable information system. The product we chose was Open SmartFlex, and this is a collaborative endeavor between Tualatin Valley Water District and Clean Water Services. Both organizations are sharing cost decision-making and ownership of the new platform. And Tualatin Valley Water District is serving as the managing agency, which means TVWD maintains responsibility for administration activities, vendor management, and making sure the system's available for all parties. And then this is really a foundational project for future improvements and opportunities. So the update for tonight is that we went live with SmartFlex over the 4th of July weekend. Staff from both organizations spent the bulk of the holiday weekend migrating data and getting the system up and tested. And since that time, we are now in a new phase of the implementation, which we refer to as the stabilization period. And the stabilization period is really where the users of the system and the administrators and the vendor work collaboratively to make sure that any issues, any system problems, any changes or configuration updates are executed as we get used to using our new business processes in this new environment. One of the things that we did as we went into the go live is we stopped shutoffs for non-payment, and we have yet to resume those. So the date at which those shutoff situations will start to be addressed, it has not been determined yet. We want to make sure that the system is stabilized, that everything is working as expected, and then we will ramp into a date with a lot of communication and awareness about what that process looks like. The stabilization period is scheduled to go for 4 months, which takes us through the end of October. And after that stabilization period, then the team will start to look at phase 2 improvements. Phase 2 improvements are things that either were deferred because they were not essential, or they are opportunities for improvement that we identified throughout the initial go live project. So both Tualatin Valley Water District and Clean Water Services have really appreciated customers' patience during the transition and getting us up and running on the new system. So I want to touch just a moment on the stabilization phase here. So the stabilization of a CIS solution, or any software for that matter, it's the period following our go live where everybody learns to adapt and use this new system more effectively. In concert, we may find needs for our vendor to adjust settings within the new system or to correct defects or identify any changes that need to be implemented that we couldn't get to during the go live process. It's typically a very busy time for the utility, both for customer service staff who are supporting customers, as well as the technology and the business process staff that need to contribute to changing processes or updating configurations. TVWD and Clean Water Services are working with our vendor to resolve a number of issues. We have very few that we label as critical, and we're tracking a whole variety of operational measurements to make sure the system is working as expected and giving us the results we need. We get a lot of feedback from our customers, and that informs where we need to apply additional efforts or focus during the stabilization. And the stabilization, as I mentioned, is 4 months, and we will end at the end of October, heading into November. The operational stabilization, which takes place outside of the software itself, that's things like adjusting to new business processes, making sure staff are trained, making sure we're getting the data out of the system that we need, can take a little bit longer than making sure the core product is working as expected. So customer service continues to work with our customers on registering for accounts and access to our new customer portal. The number of registrations since the first week of July has now exceeded, it's actually exceeded as of today, 13,000 accesses. And the promotion of the portal and its capabilities will be included in an upcoming bill insert. And as I mentioned, shutoffs for non-payment were halted prior to go live. There's a team that will be focused on both the process and the timeline to resume that, and no date as of today has been set for that activity. Some of the phase 2 projects that we are going to be looking at include things like account consolidation. This is an efficiency for customers that have multiple accounts, whether they have multiple properties or a large business that has multiple services. Advanced payment methods are things like enabling access for example, Apple Pay or alternative payments outside of the traditional methods. There's a strong focus on what we need to do to ramp into monthly billing as opposed to bi-monthly billing. And then we have a number of things that were deferred from the core implementation that were deemed non-essential, but are important for both the success of the product as well as the operation. In tandem with things like monthly billing, there's a need to take a look at the actual bill structure and do a redesign of the layout to make it more user-friendly, more clear, and provide better information. And then as we move into our rate setting process, we will address any of the items identified by the Rate Advisory Committee. And then eventually one of the key projects for the district, which we'll need to incorporate, is as we move toward AMI, or the advanced metering infrastructure, that will ultimately feed data directly into the SmartFlex product. And we will be ramping up to be ready to accept that data and use it in our billing cycles. And then finally, we just wanted to reiterate our thanks to the customers that have both been patient with the transition as well as provided feedback and help us tune the system to get to a much more efficient and streamlined go live process. So with that brief update, I'm happy to answer any questions the team may have.
Well, Tim, sounds pretty quiet. I think I don't know if the other board members saw, just before the meeting started, we got an update from our Chief Operating Officer, Peter Boone, on one of the issues that they're dealing with right now. It sounds like things are going in the right direction, or reads like things are going in the right direction of making repairs there. All right. Not hearing anything else. Thank you, Tim. We're going to move on to our next item on our agenda this evening, and this would be the Commissioner's communications and reports of meetings attended. This being our first meeting without our previous board member Bagnell, we have a new order of reporting, and now Commissioner Doan, you are first alphabetically, and can you report on your meetings attended, please?
Okay. Let's see, I attended the workshop on the first Tuesday of the month. Tonight's meeting, there were two virtual rate hearings that I attended, and that's mostly it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Doan. Commissioner Duggan.
This was an extremely busy month for me for what is usually, on most years, the quietest month. On the 21st, I went to the district office to sign the bond ordinance. On the 22nd, I had a meeting with Andrea Watson to talk about the Rate Advisory Committee selection process and to get the board email signature protocol taken care of. On the 26th, I attended Building Bridges Zoom. that focused on the unhoused community assistance projects that are available locally and what their status report is for how things are going at the present time. On the 28th, I attended a goodbye reception for Commissioner Schmidt and Commissioner Bagnell. On August 2nd, we had our TVWD board work session where we received an update on the WWSS and board member selection process. On the 3rd, I attended the Regional Water Providers Consortium CTC meeting where we got regional provider updates. On the 4th was the WWSS regular monthly meeting where we got an update on the project. On the 8th, 9th, and 13th, I attended the Talking Water open house sessions on our new rates. On the 9th, I also had a meeting with Tom Hickman and Todd Sanders to plan tonight's meeting. On the 10th, I had a meeting with Libby Baki, Andrew Watson, and Carl Fisher and Tom Hickman to talk about the rate selection prep process, and then tonight's regular meeting. That's it for the month of August. Again, the most busy month that I've had in years, and what is usually the quietest month, I have the most to report on. So thank you.
That is quite a heavy load, Commissioner Duggan. Thank you for your service. Commissioner Fisher.
Yes, I had a somewhat late start to my month thanks to a bout of COVID. So most of the things I attended were virtual. I got to attend one of the water talks where we talked about hear from customers about the rates. And then on the 8th, I think it was either the 8th, I can't remember the exact date, but I was able to go on one of the tours of the sites of the Willamette Water Plant treatment plant, which was really great to see how that was coming along, and got to attend with some legislators. And then, as Commissioner Duggan mentioned, Andrea and we had a meeting to discuss the Rate Advisory Commission membership and the application process. And then tonight's meeting.
No, thank you, Commissioner Fisher. And finally, for myself, on July 27th, myself, Tom Hickman, met with CFM, which is our lobbying organization, to continue to discuss our legislative lobbying plans, which included the site tours, which Commissioner Fisher mentioned on the 8th. On the 2nd was the TVWD work session. On the 8th, I had 4 meetings. The TVWD on-site tour with some of our legislative members. Later that afternoon, we met with CFM to debrief. And then after that, Tom and I met to talk about the contracts for the vision planning and how our partner relationships are going. And then that evening, we attended the Talking Water rates meeting, which again, Andrea and her team, they just do a wonderful job of reaching out and do these kind of community outreach activities. And I really appreciate the work that they do. On the 9th, as Commissioner Duggan mentioned, we met for our board planning meeting in the morning, only to turn around at noon and again attend another Talking Water rates open house. And then later that afternoon, meet with to meet with some of the members of the leadership team to discuss how to address the gratefully, large number of applicants for board positions. Then on the 10th, I met with Norm Eder, who is one of the members of CFM. And then on the 11th, again, this was Thursday, the 11th, we had another site tour. And I should mention these site tours were taking place at our Willamette Water Supply Treatment Facility in Sherwood. It's just getting underway. They are at the moment blasting and excavating and prepping for concrete pours in early fall. So we did that again on the 11th. And then on Saturday, the 13th, myself, along with Commissioner Duggan, We attended the rates open house at the TVWD facilities. Then on the 16th, I had a number of really short meetings, emails, etc., phone calls for updates on the CIS, customer complaints, JWC, all kinds of fun things that took up a bunch of time. And then tonight's meeting. I think that's it on my list. That is everything on my list this week too. So yes, it can be for a month of August, it has been a very busy one, but we have some important things on the agenda that we are addressing today. Both our rate advisory committee and our um, next next step in applicants for the board itself. All right, so that takes care of that. The next item up is topics to be raised by commissioners. And I wanted to see if there were any topics to be raised by commissioners before we move into public comment. No? Okay, not hearing any. I just did want to make mention, we do have a chat question. It looks like, if I hopefully I say this correctly, Karina asks if there would be a Spanish translator from the meeting today. And I just wanted to pass on our apologies and empathize that we do not, or we have not in the past, had a Spanish translation during the live event. Uh, Thank you for making us aware of perhaps the need for that. And we will be discussing that in the future. So if I say your name right, Karina, my apologies. And we'll see what we can do about that in the future. And certainly, as Ms. Carper has pointed out, if you can give us some advance notice, we could definitely, for certain, 100% have that in place for you or anybody else who was interested in participating in the meeting. So again, my apologies. Next up is our public comment, as everyone can see by our presentation. Public comment time is set aside for persons wishing to address the board on items on the consent agenda and matters not on the agenda. Additional public comment will be invited on agenda items as they are presented. Each person is limited to 5 minutes, and unless an extension is granted by the board. Should 3 or more people testify on the same topic, each person will be limited to 3 minutes. Do we have any persons this evening who would like to comment? I see, I believe, one hand up, and it went up quick. It was.
Okay, Rob, I've enabled your microphone, so you can go ahead and unmute yourself when you're ready.
Okay.
Thank you, Debbie. I think I'm unmuted. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, yes. Mr. Fuller, is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President.
Please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good evening to you and the members of the board. My name is Rob Fuller. I've been a customer of the Tualatin Valley Water District for 20 years. On the call as well with me are my wife, Tara Fuller, and her sister, Amber Christensen. They were the owners of a home at the time when we received a rather large final water bill, which is the item that I'd like to discuss tonight. For the sake of time, I'd like to read a brief statement that summarizes our story and our position, concludes with a request for the board's response, and we should have a few minutes for discussion and Q&A if we need it to work towards a resolution. We were told that the board is aware of our situation and has reviewed the data and the correspondence that's been exchanged in numerous phone calls, emails, and other correspondence between us and the district over the last 4 months. Can I assume that that's correct? That's what Debbie told me ahead of time, that there was no need to necessarily go back and retell the entire story.
You are correct, Mr. Fuller. We have read the correspondence. That is correct.
Okay, thank you so much. And we do appreciate you doing that. We hope that it was given, a fair reading and consideration. And if that's the case, we are very much appreciative of that and the opportunity to come before the board. We received a final bill with over 200 units of water on that final bill, or roughly 150,000 gallons, equivalent of 30 5,000-gallon tanker trucks or 30 large outdoor swimming pools. In the period of 35 days, the bill was over $1,800. Our position remains the same as it has. We've confirmed that the water usage was not due to a leak. We believe that there was no possible scenario in which 150,000 gallons of water could have been consumed through normal usage, accidental usage, or even theft. Our position is that this water was not consumed, and we are not responsible for any charges beyond the normal usage that would have occurred in this house during the time frame in question. We ask that the board members would put yourselves in our shoes for a minute, listen to our story as customers, and ask yourselves what you would do if you were in the same situation. We've acted promptly, we've acted proactively, attempting to resolve the matter professionally, citing firsthand observational evidence, circumstantial evidence, logical data, and reasonable conclusions. But as of today, we've only received a 50% reduction in charges. Our request is that the board reduce the final bill to an amount based on the average water use over the prior 24 months for this home, prorated for the short billing cycle, and including any additional fixed charges and CWS charges. Our estimates of these charges comes to a total of $134.89, which we are prepared to pay immediately. So happy to discuss or answer any questions you may have, but that is what we are looking for the board's response on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Before I speak, I want to see if any of my board members like to address this at all. Okay, not hearing anything. Mr. Fuller, why I completely empathize with your position, and I read through all your documentation, and you are right. You did do a extremely diligent job of demonstrating the position that you were in, and where did that water go? Question. The truth that lies before us is that as a board, we are responsible for policy decisions and not internal operating decisions. It is not our job as a board to override the decisions of our staff, and we don't override the decisions of our staff, and we don't have that ability as a board to change the operating actions of the staff of TVWD. Our job is to set rates and to set policy, and not to make a decision that contradicts or overrides the members of our staff. That's their job. So while I am, again, very empathetic to your point, I don't mean to be cliche, but our hands are tied on this. This is not really our role as a board to change the decision of our staff. And I guess that's all I can offer you, sir.
Okay. Yeah, no, respectfully, I understand. I do think that there is an aspect of this situation that is policy related, as the operational staff have really just been operating under the given policies, right? And in this case, the policies seem to be either inapplicable or inadequate. So I think there is an argument that could be stated that says, in this case, the policies might need to be either revised, revisited, or perhaps an exception granted to a policy, which I would understand that maybe your operational staff doesn't have the right to do that. So that's why I'm coming to the board.
Your points are well founded, sir. Commissioner Duggan would just raise his hand, so I'm going to hand off to him for just a second. Commissioner Duggan?
Yes, thank you. Problems unmuting.
We got you.
I would like to hear from our attorney, but about this situation. But I did want to say that as a residential customer of the district, I had a leak that I was unaware of for a while. We had large Douglas fir tree that blew in a windstorm and caused a leak that occurred in the month of March. It wasn't really readily apparent, but I also had to follow the existing policy. We had quite a large bill, but we got the pipe fixed. We got the tree removed that was root was putting pressure and caused the leak on my house service. But I ended up paying a little bit more than my normal usage, and for what was in my control. The policy, many, well, I don't even know when the board last reviewed this policy, but it was put in place by a board well in the past. It's worked well to this time.
Yeah.
And
Excuse me, Mr. Duggan. I
yes,
appreciate your story. And just for the sake of time, in your case, you discovered a leak, you repaired a leak, and the exorbitant water usage stopped. Right? In our case, no leak was discovered, no leak was repaired, but the water usage stopped. It went back to normal. So that's why we
and that,
concluded that there was not a leak, because we didn't fix one and it stopped happening.
well, and that was my experience as well. I wasn't aware that we were having this problem, but I got it fixed promptly when we was able to figure out that there was something going on. But that was again, it's just an anecdote
Sure.
that I did experience it directly, and I think the policy is more than fair. And it was put in place by a board. Maybe Clark remembers when this was last reviewed, but I would like to hear from our attorney about the options and what his view of this policy is from a legal perspective.
Thank you.
So Commissioner Duggan, I don't know if you want to have here, maybe it's to President Sanders. Do you want to have the other commissioners comment, and then I can circle up with all questions at that time? Okay, I'll defer.
Yes, please, Clark. Thank you very much. This is our legal counsel, Clark Belfour. Commissioner Doan, your hand is up, please, sir.
Yes, I have two observations. We had a substantial water leak at our house, and it never even occurred to me to apply for an adjustment. That's not the way I work. Second, I was the chief engineer of the Portland Water Bureau for 10 years. And I also managed water conservation. And there's things with toilets called hidden leaks. And that's when the flapper valve sticks open or the float valve sticks open, and the water just goes directly from the main into the drain. And this has all the indication of a stuck flapper valve. And I just, I don't know what the solution to this is, but I know that these things happen from time to time. And since there's no water being visible, because it's all inside the toilet tank, these things are called hidden leaks, and they are indeed hidden. So I just thought I'd point that out.
Thank you, Commissioner
Thank you,
Doan.
sir.
Clark Belfour, Clark, do you want to speak now? Take the floor.
Does Commissioner Fisher have comments?
I don't see his hand up.
Okay. All right. Okay. Sure. I'll talk about this a little bit. So, first of all, this has taken longer than it should have, and I just want to say to the
Agreed.
Fullers, we're sorry. We should have been a little bit more diligent and timely in responding to you. I don't know that the conversation would be any different tonight. I mean, we may still be at this place. It may have just happened sooner, but on behalf of the staff, I just want to say I'm sorry for that
Thank
extra
you, sir.
time that we took. So I guess the next thing is to Commissioner Duggan's statement. Our leak adjustment policy, which includes unexplained water loss, and I think this is one of those unexplained losses, and probably, and from our point of view, probably along the lines of what Commissioner Doan just described. But in any event, this policy has been in place for 20 years, and it was a policy put into effect to try to account for an equitable way to adjust these sorts of things where the district would take a share of the loss. In fact, it usually works out to over 50% of the loss, and then the owner would take the other part of it. So it was seen as an equitable way where the citizens, the other ratepayers, as a collective, would absorb the larger amount of the loss, or the amount due, and then the landowner would share in some responsibility. And that's the policy we've had, and that's the policy that we applied because, Mr. Fuller's correct. There's, as staff, we have the ability to apply policies. We can take it so far. After that, it comes to the board. And this matter does touch on policy a little bit, whether or not the policy is accurate and whether or not other things could be made. So the question that Commissioner Duggan posed is, what options do we have? And the way I see it, your options are, you could say, we're going to let this thing stand status quo. The adjustment's been made. This is the amount that's due and owing. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that you could direct this matter, go back to staff, to the CEO, who, with your, I guess, delegation of authority to make some further adjustment, and according to his discretion and what he sees fit, that would then turn into a discussion between the Fullers and our CEO regarding is there some ground in there beyond what the leak adjustment is. So you do have the power to do that. And so, we always recommend in these kinds of situations, and real honestly, this is only the second one in 30 years that I can remember coming to the board. Usually they resolve below. But in this case, it came to you. You have the ability to defer it back to Tom if you wish, or you can let it stand. And then, of course, the bigger question of, do you change your policy? Do you formally change your policy, make some other kind of adjustment? That's something that we'd have to bring back to you, and you'd have to take some subsequent action to adopt in your usual policy adoption processes. So I hope I hit
Understood.
all the questions.
No, thank you, sir. Much appreciated. I'm jotting down notes on our options, and you explained that very, very succinctly. So thank you. In this case, the policy with the 50%, which works out to be greater than a 50% adjustment, I certainly understand that. I think it applies probably to most situations. I'm curious, though, if there is truly a loss of water that would not be the customer's responsibility or the customer's fault, if it were the district's fault, what policy applies to that? Where do I have the opportunity to come back to you guys and say, you know what? No, I mean, I appreciate the 50% offer, but I still feel like I'm 0% responsible for this. So I still feel like 50% is even more than what we should be obligated to pay, because nobody can explain how this happened within realistic parameters.
If I can, Mr. President, there's the water went somewhere, right? And this may be something that we haven't talked about, at least in this meeting format. So the meter moves, and the meter only moves if water goes through, and water is going through. It's being drawn, demanded from our side of the meter to the customer side of the meter, in this case, you. If a meter is failing, it typically slows down and doesn't register, or
Understood.
it either slows down and how it registers, or it doesn't register. So the water, the meter doesn't speed up if it's failing or somehow out of sync. Uh, this meter, this meter seems to be working just fine. And so it registered water going through it, and so the water went somewhere. We don't have an explanation for it other than
Yeah.
our speculation, and you have your own view of it that it didn't happen. And so that's why we call this unexplained water loss. And to me, in those circumstances, it seems reasonable then that each side has to bear some sharing of what that is going to be, what the final result of that adjustment is going to be. I know you disagree with that. So I think now it's up to the board to tell us, do they want to leave things where they are, or do they want to send this back to the CEO for further adjustment, and to ask the CEO to make such judgment as in his discretion he thinks is appropriate under the circumstances. I think those are the two areas for decision with the board tonight.
Understood. And it's likely then that the minutia of details would be a better discussion for the CEO at that point, if he is indeed the person that has the authority to make an exception or a decision.
Right, and that would really be what the board would need to tell us, that yes, we want the CEO to do this, and vest him with that authority.
Well, I know $1,800 isn't a lot to you guys, but it is to us. And I'm willing to continue the conversation with whoever has the authority to act, if I'm allowed.
Right. So I think now, Mr. President, it's up to the board to decide if you want to just stand pat with the application of your policy and nothing further, or if you want to delegate it back to the CEO with some instruction.
Thank you, Clark, and thank you again, Mr. Fuller, for your time and attention so far. Is it correct? Am I under the correct impression that the original bill was approximately $1,796, and that bill now is about 750? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And even at 750, you're unwilling to accept responsibility. Is that also correct?
Well, so if you know me, and you don't, but if you do,
No,
you'll
sir.
know that I'm the first one ready to accept responsibility if the responsibility is mine, or if I was at fault. And I've just been scratching my head for 4 months now and can't come up with even a possible solution as to how this would have happened. And so we've been holding firm on that even at $750 of a water bill, that's still 10 times what a normal water bill would have been for us. And this was a house that didn't have anybody living in it at the time using the water. So we'd like to continue the conversation. We weren't ready to accept that.
Okay. Well, thank you for that information. Um, lacking a willingness to accept, I guess, your share of the cost. Remember, the $1,000 that we've already absorbed has to be paid for by the rest of our customers. This doesn't come out of my pocket or any of the other commissioners. This is paid for by the rest of our customer base. And what you're asking is for the customers to pay this money. I'm going to side towards accepting the position that the staff has made a decision, and I'm willing to accept their decision, but I am only one of the board members, and I'd like to allow the other members to speak in. Commissioner Duggan, look like you're on camera, and you look like you started to speak, so, and you are on mute.
I started to speak because I had a number of overriding noisemakers in the background that I asked to keep quiet. I would like to hear if make sure that there's no other board members that have input before I register my opinion right now.
Commissioner Doan, calling on you if you have
Yes.
any further thoughts.
Well, having endured this for 20 years and the similar things in the City of Portland Water Bureau, I think the TVWD policy is very fair. As I stated earlier, my supposition is that it was either a leaky float valve or a leaky flapper valve, and the water just went directly from the toilet into the sewer. I mean, the fact that the meter is reading correctly now, I've never heard of a meter that escalated and then went back to normal. So I think the existing policy makes sense and would support it.
Thank you, Commissioner Doan. Commissioner Fisher, do you have any thoughts?
Not many. I guess at this point, based on what I've read and what I've heard so far, I guess I'm sort of at my sort of safe point of what I feel the rest of us in the district should be able to contribute to this situation. And that's absorbing that $1,000 or so cost. I haven't quite read or heard anything quite yet that would lead me to question the staff's further decisions on this.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Commissioner Duggan, sir.
Uh, my final thoughts is I concur with Commissioner Doan and Commissioner Fisher, and unless there are new facts that come to light different from what has been presented and what was in our board packet, what we've talked about tonight, I would refer this back to the CEO if there are new facts that come to light to administer and proceed from there. But if there are no further facts, I'd say that our existing policy is appropriate and ask the CEO to administer it as he best sees fit.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Duggan. Commissioner Fuller, as a board, we seem unified in our decision that we will stand behind the decision of our staff at this time. If there is some extenuating circumstances that do come forward, we ask that you please present them in your usual communication channels that you've already expressed, or you are welcome to bring it to the board. And if you don't feel that you are getting adequate response, and you come up with new information, we will absolutely 100% address it when it comes, and we will listen to it objectively if you bring it forward.
President Sanders, just one question for you. Will the
Yes, sir.
minutes actually reflect that I'm now Commissioner Fuller? Because that's pretty cool, actually. And I don't know if that's what I need to do to order to have more of a voice at the table. But you referred to me as Commissioner Fuller, which I'll
Well, I
gladly accept.
apologize to that.
No, it's a compliment. I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
No, I understand. I do question whether or not a toilet can consume 150,000 gallons of water through a leak in 30 days. But I do understand where the board is coming from. And it's unfortunate that at this point, as a customer, there's no one left to advocate for us. It's really your policy against our opinion. And in this case, I don't think we have a chance. So appreciate the time and the consideration, and we will circle back with the proper channels.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I do believe that we have one additional person with their hand up. Are they planning on speaking now? This would be William, I apologize if I don't say this correctly, Porkanoy?
I think it's William Picorni, and I'm going to enable his mic. But
My
William, I just want to
apologies.
make clear that this is not the rate public hearing portion of the meeting. So if you did want to speak during the public comment about something not related to the rate hearing, you're welcome to unmute yourself now. But otherwise, if you wanted to just go ahead and wait until the rate hearing, we can do that too.
Okay, I'll wait until later. When
Okay,
it's
thank you.
appropriate. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. And I apologize for mispronouncing your name, sir. All right. Moving on with our agenda then, we now will enter the public hearing um, component of tonight's agenda, where we will consider adopting a resolution at the September 17th, 2022 board meeting, where we'll be establishing water rates for the Tualatin Valley Water District as listed in Exhibit A of the resolution with an effective date of November 1st, 2022. Remember, no action will be taken at this meeting. First, we will begin by hearing a staff presentation, and then we will have the public hearing. Anyone who wishes to offer testimony in support or opposition to this item will be given 5 minutes, unless an extension is granted by the board. So we'll begin by a presentation by our staff.
Good evening, President Sanders and Commissioners. This is Paul Matthews, Chief Financial Officer for the Tualatin Valley Water District. We were going to go through a quick presentation introducing the topic. The information that we'll be talking about tonight is condensed information that I've presented to you in the past. It's also condensed information that we presented at our 3 open houses, and I'll talk more about that as we go through the process. I want to start with what's changed. What has occurred that has caused us to come back this summer and ask for an adjustment in our water rates? First and most importantly is an increase in the cost of the Willamette water supply system. This has largely been the result of an increase in the inflationary environment, supply chain issues that have occurred nationally and internationally. That has driven our cost up. During our open houses, we had our water supply program director, Dave Kraska, describe some of those increases, and I'll touch on them tonight, but he gave a much more thorough and presentation of those issues. As a result, we're now requesting or proposing that the increased water rates would be at a 14.25% as opposed to the 9.5% which is currently adopted. That would mean for a typical customer, the bill would go up by $8.81 per month, as opposed to $5.83 per month, so about a $3 per month increase. And so that's what's changed in our proposal. Mr. Kraska did present this information during his presentation at the open house. A big part of what's driving the cost is the recent bids that we've had on 2 very important parts of the Willamette water supply system, and that is the reservoir and related pipeline. The cost, the actual bids that we received through the competitive bidding process were higher than the original engineering estimates, and a big increase in the bid for the Willamette water supply system water treatment plant. Taken together, those have increased by about $315 million. And that is shared not just with TVWD, but also with our partners that include the City of Hillsborough and the City of Beaverton. So right now, the Willamette water supply system cost currently at $1.6 billion. The prior estimate was $1.3 billion, and raising the additional money to finance that is what brings us here tonight. Like all responsibly managed utilities, the district has a financial management process, and you know well, and we discussed this at the open houses, that starts in the early spring, late winter, where we develop financial strategies to fund the district's capital improvement plan and operating. In addition to that, we have a biennial budget process. We just completed the first year of the biennial budget. We're now in the second year of the biennial budget. That biennial budget is a 2-year spending plan that sets legal appropriations. But our financial plan looks out much further than that. Our financial plan looks over a long period of time, 30 years, with the primary focus out past the finalization of the Willamette Water Supply Program, which is about 2027. And then that brings us to the rates, and that's what we're talking about tonight. So the rates are the actual charges that we use to recover the revenue that is anticipated in the district's strategic financial plan and the budget. And then the last part of this is actually delivering the water and the customer service and the infrastructure projects that we have. In June, I'm sorry, at your July regular meeting, you adopted a rate process that we've implemented. It included 2 virtual open houses. And again, the material I'm presenting here tonight is a condensation of the material we presented more fully to the public at those open houses. The first was on Monday, August 8th from 6 to 7 p.m. and Tuesday, August 9th from noon to 1. We split that up so that people could either attend in the evening or during the workday. And we also had an in-person open house here at the district's headquarters on Saturday, a weekend, to try to maximize the opportunity for people to attend. The next part of that process is tonight's public hearing. The public hearing is both online. The public hearing is online. As you can see, we do have citizens attending. The public hearing was noticed as required by law. We mailed out a notice to our customers. In addition, your July 20th action included holding a public comment period open through June 25th. So we'll continue to accept public comment through until 4 p.m. on the 25th. All the comment that we receive will be included in the public record for your consideration, with requested action occurring at your regular meeting on September the 21st, when we would be presenting the rates for adoption. As we put together our capital plan and the Willamette Water Supply Program, we do want to explain to customers what the motivation for this. And our water system is at risk. We have a risk of earthquakes. Obviously, the Cascade subduction zone earthquake is something that we're concerned about. We have droughts, climate change, power outages. In fact, our system relies on some pumping, and that requires power to pump that water. Fires can interrupt our ability to get water from our wholesale providers. What have we done to take actions to mitigate those risks? Well, first, we have multiple sources of supply, and this has been a long-term policy of the board, is to have multiple sources of supply to enhance the reliability and resilience of the system. We have river water, both from the Tualatin Trash system as well as the Bull Run system that we can use, augmented with stored water at the Barney Reservoir, which the district is part owner in, through Hag Lake with our partnerships there, as well as in the Bull Run system. The district also has an aquifer storage and recovery well, where we take water during the off-peak period. And when water is plentiful and treatment capacity is plentiful, we treat that water, we inject it into the wells, and then we can pump it out in the summer months or during emergency where supply would otherwise be interrupted. And then we have regional partnerships. We've taken great care to interconnect our systems with our partners, with the City of Portland, with the City of Beaverton, with the City of Tigard, with the City of Hillsborough. And that allows the water utilities to operate in a regional manner and reduce the likelihood that any one of our neighbors or, in fact, our customers would be without water. And the last thing I want to mention is conservation. Conservation has been something the district has long invested in, and in fact, has been helpful in reducing our risk of summer interruptions. In fact, I want to present this chart that shows over time the success we've had with our conservation program in reducing the gallons per capita per day consumption of our customers. The important thing here is, had we not had this kind of conservation, our capital program would be accelerated. Our rates would have to be higher in order to get more capacity earlier on in the process. So we've effectively used conservation to reduce our demands and to keep our existing infrastructure viable. But we are at the point where we do need to increase capacity. During the open houses, Dave Krask, how they're managing cost within the Willamette Water Supply System. First element is maximizing competition. In fact, the way that the program has split up its construction projects, they made them small enough to maximize competition from local contractors that we are within their bonding capacity so they could work on those projects, as well as to attract national contractors into the market so we can maximize competition and negotiate the best price and quality of services and goods, make effective engineering decisions. In fact, we go through a value engineering process, and Dave talked about how important that is to make sure that we are building the right facilities the right way. We proactively manage risks, and we partner on projects. An important part of keeping our costs low is by sharing the burden with neighboring utilities. And the last one listed here is we need to rigorously manage all aspects of the program to stay on schedule. And the schedule is the thing that will absolutely drive cost. And they manage the schedule very carefully. If you have questions about schedule management, Dave is on the call here and we can talk about it. But it is probably the most important thing that we can do to keep the program on budget. Mention a little bit about the partnerships and how important they are. And here are some examples that Dave presented in his presentation where we have partnered. And this not only saves money for us and for our partners, some of these road projects, for example, we're able to reduce the overall cost, reduce the impact on the public, and get the infrastructure in a very competitive way. So partnerships have been critical. We get the economies of scale by sharing the cost among the cities Hillsborough, the 12th Valley Water District, and the city of Beaverton. So all these things taken together have an important part of reducing our overall cost for the program. The other thing that Dave mentioned is the fact that we are spending a lot of this money locally. And in fact, 91% of the spend so far has been to local businesses and employees here. 4% have been regionally, which we would consider to be Oregon, Washington, and about 5% outside of Oregon, Washington. We expect that 91% to drop over time as we get to the final aspects of the program. But still, that's an incredible part where we're keeping our neighbors busy working on the program. So in addition to the program, how do we spend the money that we recover from the rates we charge? Three major things there. First is the construction of the additional water supply we're talking about. The second is maintaining and operating the water system itself. All the while we're building the $1.6 billion program, an incredible civil engineering project. If you can imagine the immensity of it. We also have to operate our water system. We need to make sure that our reservoirs are properly maintained, our pipes are maintained, pump stations, etc. And also the last element is purchased water. Our water we currently purchase from the city of Portland and from our partnership with the Joint Water Commission, but all that is part of our budget and part of our cost. I want to highlight a couple things that we've done to manage our cost. First of all, in this last biennial budget, we're actually able to reduce our personnel service costs by 2.8%. That may not seem like a lot until you look at it. It's over a 2-year period. That's not a 1-year savings. That's over a 2-year period. In spite of the inflationary environment that we're in, we've been able to reduce our personnel service cost by 2.8% by keeping vacancies, eliminating physicians, things of that nature. The board, you will remember that as we were preparing the last budget cycle, in part because of COVID and because of our concerns about some of the risks that we were facing, we deferred $50 million of infrastructure projects, actually more than $50 million, but that included elements within the Willamette Water Supply Program. We went from building 2 reservoirs for stored water on Cooper Mountain, 2 50 million gallon reservoirs to 1, and we'll build the second reservoir later as demands increase. The other thing that we have is we've deferred a major pipeline. So those are important things that we did proactively to reduce our infrastructure costs. And then the last thing, what I just talked about, is the importance of our partnership with other utilities. I want to give a couple other examples, though, of things that we wanted the public to know that may not be as obvious. I want to talk about our healthcare costs. This is something that we've worked hard and we're happy to see. The district purchases a high deductible, and we have a wellness program where we incentivize employees to use healthcare spending wisely. As a result of that, over the past 4 years, we've seen a 1.9% annual average reduction in our healthcare premium. Not an increase, but a reduction each year over that 4-year period, averaging 1.9%. And these are the kinds of things that we're doing to try to manage cost. I want to describe a slightly different focus that we had, which is on the revenue side. The district was able to take what's called a WIFIA draw. WIFIA is our Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act. It's what WIFIA stands for. It's a low-income loan that we get from the US EPA to build our infrastructure project. The interest rate that we get on our WIFI loan is 1.35%. We're able to take over $100 million draw on that loan, and we were able to invest that in U.S. Treasuries and earn about $5 million to offset the cost of our infrastructure projects. So this is another example of where we're doing everything we can to generate offsets to the cost we have. I wanted to talk a little bit here about where we are in our operating budget. We did talk in more depth during the open houses about our operating budget, but it's important right now to report that in the first year of the biennium, we are under budget by about $7.8 million. I expect that gap to close a little bit as we continue to get invoices from vendors that will be charged to the prior fiscal year. But we are under budget, and that's, again, management focus to keep our operating expenditures as low as possible. The last item I want to talk about as relates to our revenue are system development charges. So the district assesses system development charges, which are one-time capital charges when new development connects to the system. These system development charges offset the cost of growth. The idea is to manage growth so that new customers pay their fair share and our existing customers aren't being asked to subsidize growth. And so far in the biennium, we're right on track for our system development charges. Well, where does that leave us? Presented in this chart is our capital outlays that we expect over the next through 2029. The blue area of the chart that you see there, the large blue area, is the investment that we have in the Willamette water supply system. The gray areas are in-district CIP. One of the big projects that you'll see in the gray area between now and 2025 is our Metzger Pipeline East, which is a pipeline the district is paying for, but it's being delivered by the Willamette Water Supply Program, and that is going to connect our Metzger service area to the Willamette Water Supply System, and then up through Metzger, connecting the Wolf Creek system as well. So we'll have two ways of providing water into both of those service areas. But in any event, this is the issue that we have right now. These large capital outlays we're expecting to spend about $1 million a day on capital investment over the next 18 to 24 months. So what are our strategies? When we presented to the board financial strategies, we landed on the following. That first, the district will closely manage its operating capital expenditures. And I think I've discussed that. We continue to do that. That's an important part of our strategy. Second is we will pursue federal and state assistance. Third is we'll increase capacity, our financial capacity, to access the bond market to finance the water supply system at the lowest cost possible. We want to make sure we protect the district's credit so that we can get low interest loans. The other part of that is to adopt rates that provide our financial resources in advance so we can demonstrate our creditworthiness and keep the cost of capital as low as possible. The last item, which is critical, is to continue to refine our customer assistance program. Back in 2016, the district established a rate advisory committee to look at ways that we can help customers who are in need as our water rates increase the typical bills and make it difficult for customers to afford their water. We are, as you well know, and there's an agenda item later in tonight's meeting, reconvening a rate advisory committee to look further into our customer assistance program. We know that these increases in the cost of water will increase the number of customers that will find it difficult to pay their bills. Sure, there are a lot of customers who can afford an increase in their water bills, but we understand there's a growing number of customers where that is becoming more and more difficult, in some cases impossible. So our overall strategy, we implement that, is to finance both with cash and long-term debt. The hatched area that you see here, superimposed on that capital expenditure chart, is the use of our WIFIA loan. That's the $388 million loan we got from the EPA at 1.35%. The Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act money. In addition to that, we're looking at about $180 million of traditional revenue bonds that we'll need to access to finish funding the capital outlays associated with the Willamette Water Supply Program. So that's our approach. This forecast has risks, and we've talked to you, the board, about these risks. We also went over the risks when we met with the public during the open houses. A couple of them that I think are worth pointing out. First, operational risks. We are in a situation with high inflation, and we do see risks to our cost of chemicals and energy and everything else that it takes to do our business. And that we expect that inflationary cost will continue to put pressure on our operating budgets. The supply chain interruption also. We last year had an interruption of chlorine, which is important for both the City of Portland and our Joint Water Commission sources, and that has an impact on our cost. Probably more important right now, though, is interest rates. Because we are financing a large part of the Willamette water supply system, our financial forecast is very sensitive to interest rates, and interest rates are affected by inflation. So we're looking very closely at interest rates and monitoring that very carefully. Capital expenditures, I've talked about that enough. I'm not going to talk too much more about that. But then there are the other category of things that could go on: economic downturn, changes in water demand that are the result of increases in rates. We've taken that into account, but that's difficult to forecast the ultimate impact that would have. We also could have a curtailment. And of course, that given droughts and other uncertainty associated with weather and climate change is something that we're very cognizant of. And the international economic environment is precarious. We talked about this last time. We talked about the possibility of war. In fact, we did experience that. So these kinds of things will affect our forecast. I want to move on to the presentation of the actual proposed rates. The district actually has two components to rates. It has a fixed charge. That fixed charge is based on the size of the water meter, and the larger the meter, the larger the fixed cost. It recovers the cost of reading the meter, maintaining the meter. It includes some of the costs associated with providing fire protection. We need to provide fire protection throughout the district to suppress fires in the event that one breaks out. So in event, those items are included in this fixed charge. All those customer-related costs, the meter service-related costs, and some of the fire protection costs. What's presented here are the monthly charges. Most of our customers are billed on a bi-monthly basis, but we present this on a monthly basis to make it more comparable to other utility bills they pay on a monthly basis. We are talking about increasing the fixed charge for a 5/8-inch meter, which is the typical single-family residential meter, from $18.60 to $21.25. The district has a block rate structure. So in addition to the fixed charge, there's a volume charge, which is based on the amount of water that you consume. The two block rate structure is designed so that customers that put a greater peaking on the system that cost the district more to provide that water during that peak period actually pay an elevated cost for those units of water. For single-family customers, the block one rate includes all consumption up to 14 CCF per month or 28 CCF over a 2-month period. And for our commercial and industrial non-single-family residential customers, it's 140% of their moving 12-month average of water. Those rates and those blocks generate then the cost of service that keeps customers' bills in proportion to the cost of providing the service to them, and it does fairly allocate those peak-related costs to customers who take more water during the summer than others. Those bills, those water rates, then translate into some typical bills. Presented here is the typical bill that we have for a residential customer, single-family residential customer. This is the most common bill that we issue, which is 7 CCF. That's 700 cubic feet of water, about 5,200 gallons of water that we provide to a customer on a monthly basis. Again, most of our customers are billed on a bi-monthly basis. These are on a monthly basis. We're looking at that bill going up by $8.81 per month. And that's for 7 CCF, again, about 5,200 gallons of water or 22 tons of water that we deliver to our customers on a monthly basis. For customers that use more than that, we have a typical bill for those customers using 12 CCF per month. This is an above average customer. That's almost 9,000 gallons per month or 18,000 gallons over that 2-month period. 37 tons of water, going up by $13.21 for those for customers with that level of consumption. And then we want to show a high use customer, and this is a very large customer that would be using 21,000 gallons per month. That's over 87 tons of water that we would be delivering. The bill would go up for that customer by about $32.47. wanted to present here where we stack and where it compares to other neighboring utilities. And we've talked about the challenge of this chart, which is currently, and for most of, for the past 10 years, the district's been in the middle of the pack or below the middle of the pack and moving up to the upper third. And we are, in fact, going to be moving up to the top as we continue this investment, this generational investment in the Willamette Water Supply Program. I think it's interesting to note that when TVWD first partnered on the Willamette with the city of Wilsonville back in about 2000, Wilsonville was at the highest on that list. And now over the past 20 some years, they have come down the list where now we're showing them as the lowest. This is the same process that the city of Tigard, for example, when they went and joined the Lake Oswego Tigard partnership, they went up to the top and they're starting to come down. TVWD will go through this same process as well as some of our neighboring utilities as they make this generational investment. Quick highlight on what we're doing in terms of pursuing federal and state assistance. First of all, in 2021, we did get $1 million appropriations for our treatment plant. That money is in the pipeline coming to the district. Representative Bonamici included in the House appropriation bill a $3 million assistance for the Willamette Water Supply System to help at the treatment plant. Unsuccessful with $20 million requested by Senators Wyden and Merkley, but we are pursuing that and we will come back year after year with them. And the last one I want to talk about is we are working closely with the state legislatures and we are looking at getting a $75 million assistance there. There are no guarantees. There's a lot of competition for this money, but we are looking at that. Any money that we receive will go directly into the program to reduce the burden on our customers. And so we're pursuing these things very carefully. So our next step, take public comment. You'll have an opportunity to hear public comment tonight, oral testimony from those members of the public that wish to, but also we can receive public comment in email form. Simply send your comments to the board at tvwd.org. We can also have written comments if they're sent directly to TVWD at our mailing address. You can also go online at tvwd.org/rates and you can leave a comment through our forms there. Public comment period will close, and this is per the resolution that you passed in July at 4 p.m. on August the 25th, at which time we will bring the public comment to the board for your consideration. We'll then come back to the board on September 21st. You'll be able to deliberate on the public comment you received at that point, and then we would ask that you take action on the water rates themselves. So with that, I will see if there are any questions from members of the board on our water rate proposal.
Okay, so any questions from our board members at this time? Commissioners Doan, Duggan, or Fisher? We will have public comment in just a moment. Okay, not hearing any then. I'd like to begin by saying anyone who wishes to offer testimony in support or opposition to this item will be given 5 minutes unless an extension is granted by the board. I'd also like to note that if your testimony contains questions, you will be contacted by staff or you will receive a response in writing that addresses your questions after the meeting. In most cases, the board will not interact with you during the meeting. We are only collecting information. To maintain a welcoming and a harassment-free environment, the board may exclude individuals who choose to interrupt this meeting. Following our public testimony, I will close the hearing and we will take any additional comments from the staff or board. The board will take action at the September 21st board meeting after consideration of the testimony received this evening, along with any email, letters, or comment forms received throughout the rate proposal process. So at this time, I'm going to be opening the public hearing for the Tualatin Valley Water District Board to consider water rates and other charges pursuant to the provision of Oregon Revised Statute 264.312. The notice of this public hearing and its purpose was mailed to district customers. Again, I'll remind everybody that each person speaking is to address the board limited to 5 minutes. Please raise your hand feature from the selection available at the top of your screen, and I will call your name to indicate that you can speak and that you can unmute your microphone. Please start by stating your name for the record. You do not need to state your address. So with that, I believe our recorder, Debbie Carper, was going to help me with this a bit. Who's going to be our first speaker, Ms. Carper?
So it looks like some representatives of the Western Farm Workers Association would like to speak. So I am going to allow their microphone. And you can go ahead and unmute yourself at the top of your screen, and please go ahead and speak.
Okay, go ahead. Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Do it again. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, my name is Guadalupe Medel, and I will be translating for Lorenza.
Hola, mi nombre es Lorenza. Soy delegada del Consejo de Beneficios para Trabajadores del Valle de Willamette. Yo trabajo en limpieza. Estoy activa en unirme con otros trabajadores de bajos ingresos por el Consejo por 15 años. Nuestros consejos representan miles de trabajadores que incluyen trabajadores agricultores, trabajadores en viveros, trabajadores que cuiden niños y viejos. No pueden trabajar y también trabajamos en restaurantes, construcción, jardinería. Somos trabajadores esenciales, pero muchos de nosotros no podemos pagar las necesidades básicas. Pagamos nuestros impuestos y pagamos nuestras rentas, pero nuestros ingresos no mantienen el costo de vivienda y siempre nos quedamos atrás. Entonces ustedes apagan nuestras luces, nos desalojan de nuestras casas y ahora apagan el agua. Tenemos miembros que tienen que vender sus carros para pagar una cuenta de utilidad. Entonces es muy difícil ir a trabajar, o otros les faltado agua en sus casas por días y semanas y están obligados a comprar agua embotellada, que es mucho más caro. ¿Cómo explicarnos nuestros hijos cuando no pueden cepillarse sus dientes y bañarse, o cuando no pueden descargar el baño? Nosotros exigimos que ustedes terminen de parar el agua a la gente de bajos ingresos del 200 de la pobreza federal y dejan subido de la tarifa de agua. Si necesitan fondos para pagar a los nuevos tuberías que proveen agua a las corporaciones grandes, ellos deben pagar por esto.
Hello, my name is Lorenza. I am a delegate of the Willamette Valley Workers Benefit Council. I work as a janitor and have been active in uniting with other low-income workers through organization for 15 years. Our council represents thousands of workers, including farm workers, nursery workers workers who care for children and the elderly, as well as workers in restaurants, construction, and landscaping. We are essential workers, but many of us cannot afford basic necessities. We pay our taxes, we pay rent, but our wages do not keep up with the cost of living, and we constantly fall behind. Then you shut off our lights, evict us from our homes, and now shut off our water. We have members who have had to sell their car to pay a utility bill, which makes getting to work difficult. Others have gone days and weeks without running water in their house and are forced to buy bottled water, which is more expensive. What do we tell our children when they can't brush their teeth or take a bath? Why the toilet won't flush? We demand you stop all shutoffs to anyone below the 200% federal poverty line and stop the rate increase. If you need money to pay for this new pipeline, provide water for big corporations, make them pay for it.
Yeah. When do you go?
What do you want?
What do you want?
What do you want?
Stop the shut-ups.
What do you want?
Stop the shut-ups.
What do we want?
Stop the shut-ups.
What do we want?
Stop the shut-ups.
What do we want?
No rate hike.
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 Okay, next up we have William Picorni. So I'm going to enable your mic, William, and you will be able to unmute yourself at the top of the screen.
Okay, I am unmuted. Can everybody hear?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Okay, my name is William Picorni. My wife and I have lived in Washington County under the Tuolumne Valley Water Service District, and also when it was the other company. But anyway, we've lived here almost 50 years, but today I want to talk about the rate increase that is being proposed. Last year, the Water District stated that this segment of the rate would increase in the neighborhood of 8.3%. And now they're talking about a little over 14% because there's some sort of explanation / justification that inflation has come upon the water district costs. Well, inflation has come across everybody in the world at this time. Tuolumne Valley Water District is not alone, and neither is everybody that lives in it. But we are being targeted right now with this rate increase, whereas a year ago it was agreed by the district that the 8.2% was going to be part of the next budget. I understand that construction costs have changed. I understand that fuel costs have changed and everything else has changed. But I think it is important that as an institution, you stand by your word and your agreement that you had with every one of your customers. The next topic I have is this, is that Tuolumne Valley Water buys 74% of their water from the city of Portland for a nominal cost of $1.35 per 100 cubic feet of water. Now that rate is a little bit higher than what the city of Portland gets for some other communities, and it also is a little bit lower. But the Tuolumne Valley Water District is by far the largest purchaser of their water. And I think it would be appropriate somehow or another to try to negotiate a better rate because of the large volume that Tuolumne Valley Water District buys. Another issue is this. In the 15 communities that are in this region, we have seen that on this earlier presentation, that the Tualatin Valley Water District has a normal existing nominal cost is $62 a month. And it is 18% higher, I'm sorry, it's 21% higher than the city of Beaverton and 42% higher than the city of Hillsborough, which are Tualatin Valley Water District partners in this water line and water system improvement. I don't understand why we are being targeted as customers, that we are paying more than a proportional amount of the other partners in the group. The next item that I have is dealing with the finances. I understand from looking at things tonight that the YFIA access to $638 million is going to be used or expended during the calendar year 2023 and 24. After that, it seems as if the finances will be done with bond sales or etc. My question is that I'm a little bit curious that where has all the money been coming from that has been expended so far in the project? In 2021, the state of Oregon's House Bill number 5006 allocated over $275 million to 48 agencies / communities within the state of Oregon. This is grant money. The Tualatin Valley Water District was not in any one of those communities. My question is, why? I would think that since we're such a large facility and we do have a certain number of people that are on what you all call limited income, I consider everybody is on limited income, but it is starting to really get serious with people that are having trouble paying their water and sewer bills. Our water and sewer bill right now is higher than the combined electrical and gas bills in our house.
Sir, your 5 minutes do you have more to say? Your 5 minutes has been met. I'd be happy to give you some additional time if you have a few more comments you'd like to make.
One more, how about one more minute?
Absolutely.
Okay. The Tualatin Valley Water District on the forums, as we have seen a little bit earlier tonight, has a pretty bad reputation with the customers. Rob Fuller, he presented a situation which is very complicated and pretty significant, but a lot of other people, I would imagine that there are lower income people, they have a lot of problems with scheduling, paying connection fees, disconnection fees, late fees, and things like that. And if you look on the forums, it does not look as if the Tualatin Valley Water District has any compassion. I think it should change. I think that maybe the new software that you are trying to implement will help out. But beyond that, that's all I have for you folks tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us this evening. District Recorder Carper, are there any additional people that are here to speak this evening?
It looks like the Western Farm Workers Association has another hand raised, so I'm going to enable that group's microphone. If you could go ahead and unmute yourself at the top and please speak for 5 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. It's very faint though.
Yeah, can you get closer to the microphone at all?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
My name is Nick Morgan. I'm speaking today as a representative of Western Farm Workers Association. We have built our independent membership of over 13,000 low-income workers here in Washington County every day over 34 years. We have seen firsthand the harsh realities of living in poverty faced by tens of thousands of working families. Lack of nutritious food, lack of access to healthcare, lack of affordable housing, and now denying working people access to water. For the first time in our 34-year history, our members are regularly coming into our office with past due bills and shut-off notices for their water service. This in the midst of a public health crisis where health departments are recommending residents to frequently wash their hands. Water departments and public utilities have proven they can function without shutting off services to poor people because they remain solvent and profitable during the moratoriums on shutoffs. We demand you permanently reinstate a moratorium on shutoffs for any family below 200% of the federal poverty guideline. No family should ever go without water or be threatened with disconnection because they are poor. Water is a human right, and according to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which was signed by the United States in 2015, it is the goal of this government to, quote, achieve universal and equitable access to safe and affordable drinking water for all. This 14.25% rate increase proposed by the Tualatin Valley Water District is neither equitable nor affordable and is therefore inconsistent with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The cost of food and gas has nearly doubled in the last year. Rent has risen steadily and many families cannot afford to find a place to live. We are seeing more hunger, homelessness, and stress for working families unable to keep up with their expenses. This rate increase only adds to the poverty crisis in Washington County. We demand that you stop this rate increase entirely for residential and small business owners. It is not only low-income workers who suffer, but also small business owners who receive higher water bills at their business, at their homes, and then once more when they lose customers who have less money to spend shopping in the local economy. If the rate needs to go up to build a huge pipeline for the benefit of large corporations, who also receive millions of dollars in tax breaks, let those corporations pay for it. In summary, we endorse the demands of the Willamette Valley Workers Benefit Council and the mandates of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in calling on the Tualatin Valley Water District to 1, stop all water shutoffs for families below 200% of the federal poverty line, and 2, stop this 14.25% rate increase for residential and small business customers that leaves low-paid workers, small business owners, and other residents deeper in poverty and unable to keep up with rising costs. Thank you.
What do you want?
No rate hikes.
What do we want?
No rate hikes.
What do you want?
No rate hikes. What do you want?
No rate hikes. What do we want? Stop the shut-offs. What do we want? Stop the shut-offs. What do we want? Stop the shut-offs. What do we want? Stop the shut-offs.
Thank you for your time and your willingness to come to speak to us today. District Recorder Carper, are there any additional people that are here to speak this evening?
No one else has raised their hand, so if anybody would like to hover over that reactions button at the top of their screen, you will see a hand icon, and if you want to raise your hand and speak, you can indicate to us that way. No one has raised their hand.
All right. Well, thank you very much. At this point, then, I will declare the rate hearing now closed. And I will ask, does the staff have any additional comments?
President Sanders, no additional comments. We did take down, I took some notes. I'm sure that the rest of the staff have. And I would encourage anybody who wants to provide written testimony to do so either by emailing board@tvwd.org or going to our website. Public comment period closes at 4 p.m. on the 25th, and we'd like to gather all that up to put in the public record for the board's consideration. That's all we have, President Sanders. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any additional questions?
This is Jim Doan. No.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Duggan. I have no questions for staff, but I do have some comments as we move forward.
I think you might have accidentally silenced yourself there, Commissioner Duggan.
No, I'm done speaking.
Okay.
If the question is questions, I have no questions for staff at this point.
All right. Commissioner Fisher, do you have any additional questions at this time?
No questions for staff, no.
Great, thank you. Just to reiterate what our Chief Financial Officer had mentioned is the reminder to that public comment period is open until 4 p.m. on August 25th. And the board will then consider taking action on the draft proposed resolution on the September 21st board meeting. My only comment was I want to express my gratitude for all the members of our community who chose to speak today. Your voice is appreciated. Your opinion is very important to us, and your consideration is critical. So I want to just, on behalf of the Board of Commissioners, thank each and every person that participated in tonight's hearing. We are very grateful for your participation. All right, next item up for bid is the consent agenda. The consent agenda items are considered to be routine and may be enacted in one motion without a separate discussion. Any board members may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. Any items requested to be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion will be considered immediately after the board has approved those items which do not require discussion. This evening, on the consent agenda, we have the July 20th, 2022 regular meetings and the August 2nd, 2022 regular work sessions. Can I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented?
This is Jim Doan. So moved.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Fisher, I second.
Thank you. Commissioner Doan has moved and Commissioner Fisher has second. I'd like to please ask the district recorder to provide a roll call vote.
Commissioner Doan,
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders.
Yes. All right. Thank you, everybody. The motion passes. To move on to agenda item number 3, which is our business agenda this evening, where we will consider adopting resolution 13-22, a resolution to appoint members to the 2022 Rate Advisory Committee, and will receive a staff report from Andrea Watson.
Good evening, Commissioner and Chair Sanders. I appreciate being here this evening. The item that we're going to be discussing is the Rate Advisory Committee member appointment and the process that we worked on. Staff worked with the two liaisons, Commissioner Duggan and Commissioner Fisher, to implement this process of selecting the applicants that we are recommending for participation on the Rate Advisory Committee. So we received 25 applications. We received applications from diverse backgrounds as well as professional and work expertise. We got multiple customer classifications, so we were really pleased with that. We got representatives from a lot of our customer classes. We got a great geographic coverage for the district. And at the same time, we also did have some customers that were very similar to one another or were from the same geographic area. And as you know, we've been talking about this for a number of months. That was the, kind of the work we had to do, is really decide how to make the selection. So we looked at representation from the residential business, industry, social services. We looked for nonprofit agencies and agencies that directly provide utility assistance to customers because we felt they could represent the interest of customers who may be struggling to pay their bills. We got government and institutional customers. We also looked for and asked for some characteristics that people would be able to work together and be productive. They'd be able to take the time necessary to look at the technical information and make some sound recommendations. But we also were very mindful that we don't need an entire committee of people with the same background, whether that's finance or engineering or any of the other disciplines. We wanted it to be a cross section of people from our community. We also looked for people who could understand the role, what we do in Washington County is drinking water, and also being able to share the information that comes forward in the RAC with other members in their community. So kind of using them as a conduit to help us do even more outreach with having the members that are selected be able to go back and talk in their neighborhoods or talk in their workplaces to help broaden the understanding of what we're doing. We also looked for geographic diversity. We looked at that a couple of ways. We looked at zip code as well as thinking about our district in zones. And then we looked at cultural background, age, and gender. And I know that was a new declaration that the charter, that the board approved, was really to look at that aspect, and we were successful in doing that. So we applied this criteria and we looked at this a number of ways, and we sort of tested our theories and came up with a list of 17 customers that we're recommending for appointment. As you know, we've also discussed the size of the group and wanting to make sure this was a meaningful experience, enough to raise some diverse ideas, but also be able to move through the complex information and the kind of nuance of options that you have in providing customer assistance. We also talked extensively about making sure that our community is welcome in these meetings. They're able to receive the technical information, and then they could work through any of the designated members to make their wishes known, as well as using the board's public to be heard and those methods that we have for hearing from the public at large. So we did do a distribution for you of the people on that recommended list. The makeup of those parties, we did have to choose from the people who applied. So there's a racial makeup here that looks like this. It's a good cross section. The only group we were really hoping to see representation from that we didn't get was our Black community. So we have some work to do there, but we are really working at this, making the groups more diverse. We also did get a gender distribution that was almost even. We've got 47% women and 53% male. We didn't ask about any other gender spectrum, but we asked people to state on their own what groups they would represent. So then we also did a geographic distribution, and this does exclude our agency reps. Most of our agency reps live just kind of on the border of the district, and because they represent people that do get utility assistance we did not require that the agency reps reside in the district. And this is sort of how it broke out. We have 31% from the north, and that region has 50% of our residential customers. Our central area got 46% of the recommended membership. Our southwest got 15%, and our southeast got 1.8%, and that part of the district is 10%. That's what we used to call the Metzger area when we were doing these kind of allocations, but we did just always do two, Wolf Creek and Metzger. And so we're trying to get more mindful that Wolf Creek area covers a lot more geography and 90% of our customers, and trying to create a little subsection in there so that we could really try to reach customers who have financial need as well as these other demographic components. So that's the work that we did for you. And then I'll turn it over if anybody has any questions for us, but we are asking that you consider the resolution to appoint these 17 members that were selected from the 25 applicants.
This is Commissioner Duggan. I have just some comments and then a motion. I wanted to compliment staff. Commissioner Fisher and I have worked with staff, and I'm very impressed with the thoughtfulness that they put into the review of the applicants' submittals. And I'm really hopeful that this rate advisory committee can come up with some really good recommendations on how we can adjust our rate structure so that we can address the equity issues that were definitely brought up this evening during our rate hearing. The public comment that we got, I just want to say that it fits exactly with what needs to be done in order to in order for the water district to be responsive to that public concern that was expressed so well this evening. Therefore, I would propose to the board that we accept staff's recommendation for this rate advisory committee and appoint those members as proposed.
Can I have a second, please?
This is Commissioner Fisher. I will also second that.
Great, thank you very much. Let's see then. May I have the district recorder to please provide a roll call vote?
Commissioner Doan,
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
A hearty yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders.
Yes. Okay, fantastic. The motion passes. The next item up is a series of potential. We'll have a smorgasbord of options on approving motions related to filling the existing board vacancy. Before I turn it over to Clark, I will mention that Commissioner Duggan, I sent an email to you a little bit before the meeting via our TVWD email system with a list of names that Commissioner Doan and I would like to move forward. Commissioner Fisher did see it. He responded to me. So I wanted to make sure that you knew that that was available, because if we ask if you approve, you probably want to know who those names are, first of all. So with that, Clark, I'll let you take over and discuss all the possible motions that exist at this time.
Thank you. So this is the next step in our board vacancy recruitment and filling process, I guess. And so I'm a hands-free person, so I'm going to ask Paul to direct us to the next slide. So in the staff report, we really are talking now about the review of what your subcommittee has done, and then now it's for you to make some decisions, and the decisions are sort of the who, the when, and the how. So it's essentially the motion that you see on the screen right here is who. And so as we say in the staff report, the subcommittee reviewed the applications. I think we received 14 of them, and narrowed it to a list of 7 people. Those 7 people names were attached to the staff report. And so the first question for you is, do you want to adopt the list of names for interviews that the subcommittee recommends? Do you want to add to that? Do you want to modify it? Do you want to cut it down? So this is a question for the board. That's really what these first motions are. 1A is you would follow the subcommittee and we would go with the names that are listed. Or the other one is if you want to make some amendments, then we'd have a similar motion. It's just that you'd have to name who it is. Without advancing the slide forward, the second part of it is, well, how do you want to interview them? Now you've narrowed it to your the number of people that you want to interview. How do you want to do it? Do you want one-on-one interviews with each candidate? Do you want to pair up 2 commissioners, 1 candidate, interview them all, and then have a recommendation and a vote on September 21st? Or do you want to do it in a public setting, in a special meeting session when you're all there en banc and can have a overall interview with everybody participating in a public meeting forum? So those are the other questions we'll get to in just a minute. But You have to keep in mind, this is the end of summer. You're trying to make your appointment by September 20th or 21st. I can't remember which day it is. So we're running out of time. People are out of town. There are some logistical issues in here. So how you select the method of interview may have an impact on how flexible we can be with scheduling and that sort of thing. So I think the first issue will be, who do you want to interview? Are the names that are recommended sufficient, or do you want to make some modifications to it? And with that, I think I'll throw it open for your discussion on who do you want to interview.
Thank you, Clark. Commissioner Duggan, Commissioner Fisher, I'm hoping that you have that email with you. Commissioner Doan and myself had recommended 7 names be moved forward. So regardless of who those 7 names are, that's 7 people that need to be interviewed between now and September 21st. Just kind of doing some general math that we had done when talking with Clark and Kylie and Tom and Debbie. At a half hour per person for the interview alone, that's 2.5 hours. Then any post-interview discussion adds on to that. So with 7 people, yeah, it adds a little bit of complexity. Have you both had a chance to see the list of names as from the emails?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I've gone through them. Not as thoroughly as I wished I could have, but I generally agree and am confident in the selection that's have been made so far. So the answer is affirmative.
Okay. So I guess addressing then how we will move forward with motion 1A or motion 1B. Was there anybody not on that list that you had hoped would be on that list? Commissioner Duggan.
Not that I see immediately. Again, looking through the different names, the people that I really wanted to be on the list appear to be on the list, and therefore I'm satisfied.
Commissioner Fisher, is there anybody not on the list that you were hoping would be on the list?
Not any individual in particular. I was sort of hoping, with this being Commissioner Bangle's seat, that we might have a woman apply for the position, but it looks like that didn't happen, or that at least made to this round. So I'm, trying to be cognizant of that in my deliberations.
Yeah, and your point is a valid one. There were no applicants. All applicants were what I would say would probably accept male pronouns. With that, was there anybody that you would like to exclude, Commissioner Duggan or Commissioner Fisher? Was there anybody that you wanted to exclude from this list that you don't find appropriate?
This Commissioner Duggan, no, I don't have any reason to object to anyone on the list.
All right. And Commissioner Fisher?
The same with me.
All right, fantastic. So Clark, if I read off the names through motion 1B, can we address motion 1 first and then move on to motion 2 secondly? Is that why you've separated them?
Well, if I understand the tenor of the board here, it's going with the subcommittee recommendation.
Yep.
Of the 7 names, and the attachment to the staff report had the 7 names. So you could, and of course you're free to modify this. So I think that what you want to do is follow motion 1A. You could either refer to attachment 1 in the staff report, or you could just read the names and follow it that way.
Okay. I think it's easier for me just to say staff report. All right, well, let's begin with that then. I bring forth to the board a a requirement for a first motion and second for motion 1A to move that individual set forth on attachment 1 of the staff report be approved for interview and that staff notify them of the next steps in the process.
This is Jim Doan, so moved.
Thank you.
This is Jim Duggan. I second.
Great. District Recorder, can I please have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Doan,
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders.
Yes. All right. Fantastic. Thank you. All right. Now we'll move just on to item number 2, which is how we are going to hold these meetings, taking into account what Clark Belfour had just mentioned to us. We are trying to shoot for a September 21st date. The 4 options, again, as you see, the first 2 here, that we set up meetings in pairs. This allows us not to have these as formal meetings. That's why 2 commissioners together doesn't require that it be a notified meeting. Doing that, we would have 2 sets of commissioners meeting with each of the applicants in pairs of commissioners, and then you would meet virtually between now and September 20th. The second option is that each individual board member would meet with the applicants, and then the third and the fourth option would be try to hold special meetings where the entire board meets with each of the applicants prior to September 21st, or the last motion, which is we have all interviews on the September 21st meeting, which would make it probably about a 4-hour meeting on September 21st between the interviews and the possible approval or rejection of the rate hike. So my recommendation personally would be motion 2A or 2B. Any other thoughts from anybody else? Yes, Clark.
I couldn't figure out the button to raise my hand, so I just had to do it. So one thing to consider with motion 2A or 2B for that matter is, we're not going to have a meeting. We would not have a meeting under this scenario, a public meeting noticed, that sort of thing. So, now we're trying to schedule people and that sort of thing. I would suggest what we had as additional motion provisions for either 2A or 2B, and that is that if the board members, if a board member can't attend an interview, that would still enable the board member to vote at the September 21st meeting on a candidate. In other words, failure to interview somebody by one board member would not disqualify that member. Similarly, because the applicants may have some scheduling difficulties themselves, if an applicant can't attend an interview, then that does disqualify them from selecting. So I think that'd be a reasonable thing to add to either of these motions if you plan with 2A or 2B.
Yeah, I concur. That's a good point to make. So we will add those. Before that was just my suggestion, 2A or 2B. Commissioner Doan, did you have a preference on A, B, C, or D?
Not really. However, works for most people. My assumption is these are virtual meetings.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Then any of them work for me.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Duggan, did you have a preference on A, B, C, or D?
Yes, in thinking it through and considering the time of year, I would would be inclined to propose 2C, just because it would allow staff to get things lined up for possibly days before the meeting when most people should be back from summer vacations or otherwise available before our September meeting. That's just my thought. And I think it would be good to have the entire board see people at the same time so that we all have the same information that we're going off of, at least in theory.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. That's very wise. Commissioner Fisher, did you have a preference for A, B, C, or D?
I don't have a strong preference either way. I feel if we're going to bring forth 7 candidates before the body, 7 feels like an awful lot to bring before a body for interviews. And I'd feel more comfortable, like when the county commissioners have to select a new state rep, maybe 3 people get called before us if we're going to meet collectively as a board at a public meeting, and then we pick one of those 3. But 7 seems like an awful lot to go through.
So a recommendation
there could
is
be
that
there could be more of a winnowing process if we're going to have these 7 people.
Mhm. So you'd like to see it from 7 to 3, and then those 3 meet with the board in perhaps motion 2C.
Yeah.
Any recommendation on how to winnow down or preference on how to winnow down from 7 to 3? Since that would probably come down to Commissioner Doan and myself again. Any suggestions or recommendations on how we perform that?
I mean,
You're on the hot seat.
Could do a more thorough, one-on-one interview. I don't know if you got everything you out of between the previous bunch that applied and these 7, or if you just went through applications for just these 7.
We went through the applications for all of the that we received, and then talked about what were the appealing factors in their presentations, and then found that each of us, Commissioner Doan and myself, had independently made a list of applicants, and that our list was pretty much identical to one another. We had both picked the same people, so we felt that that was a sign that that we could move forward with the list that we have in front of you now. Commissioner Doan, how do you feel about the 2 of us meeting with the 7 applicants and then bringing that down to 3 and then bringing those 3 before the board?
I think we could do it. I'd like it to be 3 or 4. So that if there's somebody on the borderline, we're not just eliminating them.
Mhm.
But we may be able to get to 3. We just have to be careful with it.
Okay. Commissioner Duggan, how do you feel about that potential process? Having Commissioner Doan and I meet with each of those members individually and winnow that group down to 3 or 4?
Well, again, I think that that process sounds pretty labor intensive, and I was hoping that if we went with 2C, that we would have like 2 full board meetings before that time, where we could all hear the 7 that have been winnowed down at this point, and each of those sessions would be reasonable length. And again, we're working off the same bits of information as a board. I would like to commend, I think you and Commissioner Doan have done an excellent job so far, but this is a really critical decision. And again, I don't, with the limitations of the virtual world that we have, I think as a full board, we need to make the investment in a public setting that allows for full transparency on how these decisions are being met, or how these decisions are being made, and therefore I think 2C, if we get 2 board meetings special meetings before our September meeting, I would, and again, I'd like to hear staff, if staff has any reaction to my proposal to go with 2C, if they have any concerns as opposed to what was previously being considered.
I don't know if Kylie's here, but I do believe, well, I know Clark's here and I know Debbie's here. They both participated and are kind of leading us through this. Clark and Debbie, did you have any thoughts on what Commissioner Duggan is saying?
Well, I'll start. So here we are. The one reason why we divided these motions up was, to determine the number of candidates to go forward. So we're going from 14. Your last motion was to take it to 7, and then we're to advise of next steps. Well, that's what you're doing right now. You're trying to figure out the next steps. So we don't have to undo the motion that you just adopted on the 7. What we do need to decide is, one, is there going to be a further winnowing process? So that's one question before you. And presumably you would do the winnowing by having the subcommittee meet with everyone and coming up with a further recommendation for board interviews. And then that's the question now that we're talking about with Commissioner Duggan, of how do you do those board interviews? And we talked about the 2-on-2 concept, but also now with the special meeting. Remember, with the special meeting context, we can do that, and that's not a problem. And it is, Commissioner Duggan's correct. This is a person that you want to have a deeper dive into, to make sure that there's going to be harmonious working relationships, and you're going to get the points of view that you're trying to get. I mean, not like a lockstep point of view, but that you're going to bring in someone, a fresh set of eyes, that's going to be able to work with the board and make the board better. So I think that if you want to do this in a special meeting format, like in motion 2C, whether you're talking to everybody or whether you're talking to a subset of the 7, we can do that. I think what you need to be ready for is, once again, scheduling and trying to pull things together. We have a month essentially. I think it's a workable time frame, but I think you also need to maintain flexibility that your September 21st meeting appointment time may slide a little bit as you go through this process to make sure that you have fully vetted your candidates. So I think we can make 2C work. Staff doesn't have any energy on this one way or the other, but I think the board needs to be flexible that September 21st, that schedule may slip a little bit for the actual appointment and swearing in. Debbie, you may have other thoughts, and any other staff members as well.
Just from an administrative standpoint, we'll do whatever is necessary. So it makes no matter to us, whichever choice you choose. We'll go ahead and accommodate it.
Yep.
Okay. So Commissioner Duggan, how does that, in terms of logistics with our staff, does that help you with a decision one way or the other? You've kind of convinced me motion 2C might be a very good choice.
Well, I'm open to persuasion as well. I just have remembered past board appointments that TVWD has done in my tenure, and the more people are involved, the better a decision is made, and the more transparent that decision-making process is, the better. And therefore, that's why I still favor 2C, and not hearing any major objections from staff regarding the logistics of going that way. We can always delay a decision, but I think it would get us there the quickest and with the best concern for public process.
Excellent. Commissioner Fisher, do you have any objection to following motion 2C?
No, I mean, I just offered up the suggestion that 7 people might be overwhelming, but if we're going to break it up into several different meetings, the only thing that will lack is the ability to judge them all together at the same time.
Yep, that is a valid point. I guess we can try to overcome that the best by the fact that all 4 of us will be there in 2 or 3 meetings that it takes to meet with all of the potential applicants, and we can share our opinions then. We will not take notes. All right. Well, if there is no additional discussion, can I recommend that we motion for 2C? That would be to have single or multiple virtual special meetings of the board to be called by the president to reasonably accommodate schedules of the board and the applicants to conduct the interviews. Can I have a motion, please?
This is Commissioner Duggan, so moved.
And second?
Commissioner Fisher, I second.
Thank you. Can I get a roll call vote?
Commissioner Doan,
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
Yes.
Commissioner Fisher,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders.
Yes. Thank you. And the motion passes. And then again, I'd like to thank Commissioner Duggan for his continued wisdom and value to this board. Always with the good ideas and the good decisions. So I'm grateful for your participation here. All right. What is, I think, because this is slide 70, that's where we are. We're at the adjournment point. So with that, I am calling this meeting to adjournment, and we will end recording.